Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Marketing Guides for Small Businesses podcast. I am your host today, Ken Tucker, and I'm joined by Paul and Ian. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Glad to be here.
So we had something planned for this episode, and as things happen, we had to reschedule. So hopefully, we'll have our guest that we were expecting this week on next week. But I've been working on a lot of different things, and there are just some things that I'm constantly amazed at that when I talk to prospective customers and clients, they either don't see the value in, or there's a lot of confusion, or I just do a lot of internal soul searching to always try to look and find ways to do things better myself. And so there have been some things that have been kind of on my mind from a marketing perspective, and so I just decided, what the heck, I'm going to see what answers I can get from Paul and Ian, and maybe they can make my life easier. So here we go. Maybe some of you have some of the same questions or things that have been gnawing at you. So, Paul, I'm going to start with you. Um, what are some of the most important online marketing metrics that a small business should be tracking? I know there are a lot, and I think there are a lot that are distractions that don't really add value. So I'd love to hear what you think are real important metrics that small businesses should be looking at.
Well, I have a short list here, obviously not all inclusive. The thing with tracking things online is everything has to be taken in context. So, obviously, website traffic is a big one. I'm not going to, go too in depth on all of these, but that's obvious. That's the number of visitors to your website. And just as important as the source of that traffic. Is it coming from social media? Is it coming from organic search? And, if you look at analytics, a lot of times you'll see a category called direct. And that's very misleading because people think that means someone went to Google or Bing or whatever and typed in your website and that's how they got there. Direct is anything that Google can't definitively assign a source to. Okay. So that can be a lot of different things. If somebody's using DuckDuckGo, Google's going to throw that into direct because they can't define a source for it. So website traffic itself is good, but then are those the right people? Is that the right audience? So that's a whole nother discussion. So another one is conversion rate. So in order to track that, you have to define what's a conversion. Well, a conversion is anything that's important. A newsletter sign up is a conversion. Okay. If you have a video on your website that directs them or, talks about a service you offer and someone watches that could be a conversion. If they fill out a form, that could be a conversion. I mean, obviously, ultimately, what you want all these things to do is turn them into a paying customer, but you have to define what is a conversion for your business.
Where do you do that? What tool do you set up conversions for our listeners?
Oh, generally in analytics.
Okay.
In Google Analytics.
And it's not a simple thing to do either, right?
No, it's not.
Yeah.
And so you can do it in analytics if you're working with a marketing agency, or even if you're doing it on yourself. Call tracking, you can have a separate call tracking platform. There's different call tracking platforms. You can track conversions in a CRM, but again, like you said, that it's not a simple thing to do. There's a lot of moving parts that have to be put in place properly. So for a small business to do a lot of this conversion tracking on their own, it's not as simple as some people make it out to be. And to do it properly is not a simple implementation. Another one, and this is the one that really irritates me, because there's a lot of bad information out there, is bounce rate. And Google themselves has said that bounce rate by itself has nothing to do with ranking. Now, they have not said that they don't use that in combination with other factors such as dwell time, but everyone wants to focus on bounce rate. And yeah, a high bounce rate may or may not be a bad thing, but I wouldn't put bounce rate in a silo and say this is good or this is bad. It has to be looked at in context with everything else, which leads to average time on site, called dwell time. And that's how much time people spend on the page or on the website in general. And this is where internal linking comes in, because you guide people through your website using internal links. So average time on site is important. Social media engagement, that's another one that I use this example a lot. If you're an accountant, engagement on Facebook probably isn't that important. Okay. So it depends on, this is something that depends on the industry or business that you're in. And is a particular platform relevant, or how relevant is it to what you do? Pinterest, for an interior designer, Pinterest is probably a great platform. For a plumber, I don't know how important Pinterest would be. Email open and click-through rates. If you're sending out an email newsletter, you definitely want to track, are they opened? Are they clicking through if you have links in your email? Or people clicking through those links? If you have you send out an email and you have a link to an online resource, are people clicking on that link and signing up for some kind of offer that you have, whatever that may be? You definitely want to track that. You want to track unsubscribes, because if unsubscribes in conjunction with open rates can tell you a lot. So ROI on your marketing campaigns is obviously important. So the cost of a campaign you're running divided by the revenue generated by that campaign gives you the ROI. You definitely want to know, because if you're losing money on a marketing campaign, then obviously you should think about changing your strategy, looking at what's going on, what's happening, what's not happening. And the last one, something that surprises me with a lot of small businesses, lifetime value of the customer. A lot of small businesses don't know what the customer lifetime value is. And again, that's something that if you're a roofer, how many times do you get a new roof put on? But maybe you offer other things like gutter cleaning, or you offer these other services, a yearly inspection, things like that. But another part of lifetime value is if you're a roofer and a customer refers someone to you and you get that job, you get a $15,000 job, that's part of lifetime value. So, and this goes back to developing those customer relationships and things like that. But lifetime value is definitely something that needs to be tracked. So
I would also say, one thing that is kind of inherent in lifetime value is what's the average job size, and what's your close rate. For every lead you get, how many of those do you close? Those are important metrics that I think a lot of businesses have never spent time, really kind of figuring out and calculating. And yet, if you're trying to plan for growth, it's really hard to do that in in a intentional way when you don't know things like customer lifetime value, your close rate on existing, whenever you get a lead, what's your average job size, things like that. Ian, Paul talked a little bit about call tracking as a great way to kind of help you track conversions. I am constantly amazed at pushback that I get from some prospects and clients about call tracking numbers, and I think they're golden. So, but I'd love to hear your thoughts, and maybe we can unpack what some of the concerns are, but what some of the benefits are for folks.
Sure. Yeah. And I'll walk people through what call tracking is, first of all, how it performs its function, and then I'll go into the benefits and the risks. So I think this is an awesome question too, Ken, because I'm a huge fan of call tracking. But I'm a huge fan because it exists to provide source attribution information for calls and form completions that come through your website. In layman's terms, this means that you will not only be able to track the actual conversion, like that a call was made, a form completion was done, but you will know where that conversion came from. And that's super powerful. And it's actually much harder to do. In fact, I don't know of an easy way except creating some giant, crazy programmatic machine that can do this. But somebody's gone to the trouble of doing this. They've cracked the code. And so that's where call tracking comes in. It's really valuable to know because it provides you with the best information for making decisions of where to invest more or less money, or where you need to refine your marketing strategies or tactics. That it's such a valuable partner in your overall marketing strategy as a business. How this is done, just to give people an idea of how the call tracking works, if you're not familiar with it, is that the call tracking system substitutes a different phone number on your website with a unique number that identifies the original source of the caller. So for example, the system knows that if a person is coming through Google Ads, it's going to use this specific phone number on the website so that when somebody actually comes to the website through a Google ad and they call that number, it can say, fantastic, this caller came through Google Ads. And the same is true for organic, Google My Business, and a bunch of other things. So that it's just a really great way of knowing where people are coming from. It's entirely seamless. Like once it's set up, you as the business, it's seamless. You don't even recognize it. You might notice that the number's different, but that doesn't matter, right? And I'll explain why that's less of a risk than some people think it is later on. But and it forwards it to your main number. So it's entirely seamless to your customer and to your team. But let's look at a few of the benefits. So first of all, it as I mentioned, it helps you measure. So it gives you more measurement and tracking capabilities. The call numbers allow you to track and measure the success of your marketing campaigns, including the number of calls received, the call duration, the conversion rates. You can even record the calls if you choose to set that up. And there's some best practices related to that.
And it's legal in your state or province.
Correct. Yeah. And oftentimes the legality, if it's legal in your state or province, usually the best practice and part of the requirement is that you actually tell people that you're recording the call ahead of time, which these systems, again, make it super easy to do. But it also allows you as the business owner, I see this as a huge untapped benefit for many businesses. Even those who have call tracking rarely do this, and they really should. And I try to encourage them to do this. And that's auditing their own calls. So having like an inside sales manager or a business owner audit the calls of their customer service team, their reception team, their sales team, because what it allows you to do is actually coach those people into how to better convert prospects into customers, how to answer specific questions. Because as a marketer, I'll often do just some sample audits of the calls for my clients because I want to understand, especially if I see a drop in conversions. I especially relate it if it's if we're doing a Google Ads campaign and I see a drop in conversions on Google Ads callers. I want to determine what is the quality of the calls coming in from that ad campaign, and that allows me to actually hear, what was the person looking for? How did the salesperson respond to it? Did they lose the sale because they didn't actually listen properly, and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So what's interesting too is that most often we're talking about call tracking for digital marketing, but I'd be so remiss if I didn't suggest that call tracking is one of the most powerful things you can do for traditional marketing. And it's often overlooked because people have this schism in their mind that I have my digital marketing and I have my traditional marketing. But for most businesses, how do you possibly know if a billboard is working? Yes, you can say, well, we ask everybody who comes through our door, every new patient, every new customer, how did you hear about us? But the problem is that you're relying on human error in, first of all, your team remembering to ask, but also the person remembering where their first touch point was and then their last touch point. And these systems help you do that. So you can in traditional, how you would use it in like a postcard campaign, a direct mail campaign, is you would have a specific tracking phone number set up, and perhaps a QR code as well, that would direct people, and it would tell the system that this person is coming from this direct mail campaign. And you can super splice this up. You can have different numbers for A/B testing and all sorts of amazing things. But if you're doing any kind of traditional marketing at scale, and it's an investment for your business, which it always is, because traditional marketing isn't cheap, you have to be using something like this, or you have no idea really what the results are.
Yeah.
Some other benefits, and I know I'm going on a long time. I haven't even gotten to the risks yet, but better targeting, by assigning a unique tracking number to different marketing channels. You can determine which channels are driving the most calls, and you can adjust the strategy, maybe put more money or effort towards different things. Increase customer insights. I talked about the auditing, but call tracking also provides valuable insights into their behavior, their preferences, such as the time of day when customers are most likely to call and the reasons for calling.
Yeah.
You can even, in some of these systems, like we really like the tool called CallRail, but in there you can even do forms of automated scoring. If this keyword shows up, of course you pay extra for these types of functionality, but if the person uses these keywords, then score them as a qualified buyer, right? If they use these keywords, they're not qualified. And of course, improved ROI is a huge benefit, because call tracking numbers help you determine the return on investment directly attributed to the marketing that you're looking at, the different campaigns, and it allows you to optimize the spend. So before I go into any risks, because that went really long, but I'm super passionate about call tracking because
Absolutely,
it solves a very, very big problem in the marketing world for businesses, and that's attributing the value and the source and the return on investment of actual activities. And that's often overlooked, especially when you get into smaller businesses.
right? Yeah, absolutely.
Just some risks. I'll try not to take as long on these, but potential confusion. Some people, some business owners feel really anxious that the number that they've had for 20 years is not the number that people are going to be seeing. But let's be real. Like you and I, we use our smartphones so much. If we're looking for a number, even if they call the number that they have saved and it goes straight to the main number, that's fine. Like those people probably weren't new prospects anyways. But for new prospects, they're going to Google you. They're going to look you up online. It's not going to be Ian handing Ken a slip of paper with the original number on it. That happens so rarely now that you'd be missing tons of information if you went that way.
Yeah.
Some people worry that there's decreased trust because you're using different numbers. But again, people don't really care. Like we're not hyper, we have so much information, like the information overload that we as consumers now deal with is just overwhelming. And we're not going to be slicing and dicing unless we have a particular bent for numbers and go, whoa, that's a different number. So I don't see that as a big risk either. Increased cost. Absolutely. There's an increased cost for introducing call tracking and good call tracking, because there's different levels of systems out there. But if you want a really good call tracking system, of course, it's gonna increase the cost. The beauty of working with an agency that's already doing this is that it will not increase the cost as much as you doing it yourself.
Right.
Technical difficulties, that's another worry. Like, anytime you introduce another linkage in any engine, system, process, potential breakage can happen, and that's absolutely true. But just as way of a real life anecdote, I've only had, in the 7 years I've been using call tracking through outsourced marketing, we've had one instance of a breakage happening, and we were able to get that resolved like within hours. So it wasn't massive. Breakages actually happen more often with our client's main phone number due to phone outages than it does with the call tracking, from my observation.
Yeah. So I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
One thing that I wonder about, and I don't know the answer to this, Paul, you or Ian, either one. Call tracking numbers can tend to turn over, because people, like if you're doing a postcard campaign and you decided to move on and you no longer want to use that number, you stop paying for it. Somebody else can come along and pick up that number. Is there any issue with those calls being marked as potential spam callers or anything like that? Because you don't know who owned the number before, and so I was just curious about that.
I can answer it, or Paul can answer it. Paul, do you want to jump in, or shall I answer this one?
No, go ahead, and I'll see if I have anything to add.
You'll see if I do it right. So there's always that danger, right? Like that, there's always that danger, even when you set up a new phone number for your business, period. Just to give you a small story. So this is years and years ago, before call tracking was even a thing. Doing a direct mail campaign for a large national business. I was a marketing manager there. We needed a new phone number in order to track because this is how it was done before call tracking was done, is you would set up a separate number so that your team would know, if the number's coming through this, if a call's coming through this number, we know it's related to this campaign, right? So it was a dumbed down version, but and what we learned was that we were getting some pretty wacky calls originally, and that was because this number had originally been used by a less than scrupulous adult entertainment place. Okay. And so,
did they record those calls? I bet they were interesting.
I don't remember. Like, again, this wasn't call tracking. This was just direct to our inside sales team. So, but that's an example of how it could happen anytime. I think it's just, it's just pragmatic that when you set up any kind of new phone number, you call it, you call it yourself, you call from it yourself, you have your team call from it, right? And you just see what is happening, and you see, is it showing up as spam on my phone? If it's showing up on spam on your phone, it's going to show up on spam as other people's phone. And there are ways to remediate that, or you can just switch out the number, like especially with call tracking, because it's based on a pool of numbers. It's very easy to sub numbers in and out of that. So if you have I had one client where one of the numbers happened to be for an old an old number for a car dealership, and these people were in a different country. In fact, they were in Canada. The car dealership was from somewhere in the US, and so we were it was, a toll-free number. And so we were able to switch that out, use a different number pretty easily. But again, it's just pragmatic, like just pay attention and don't assume everything's working properly unless you test it and that kind of stuff. But just to kind of close the door on the call tracking conversation, like the benefits far outweigh any perceived or real risks. And if you're serious about your marketing investment, you absolutely have to invest in call tracking. Because especially if you're doing any form of paid advertising, you have to implement this, because it will be your clearest measurement of effectiveness or ineffectiveness,
as well as traditional. It's the clearest way to measure. Yeah.
Well, and one other that you were talking about the potential downsides of call tracking, but I think, well, one thing you didn't mention that people are going to hear is dynamic number insertion. Okay,
Yeah.
that's the number swapping you were talking about, and that's the term people are going to hear, just for a little bit of information there. But I think that when you were talking about people saying, we've had this number for 20 years, I think that's part of a larger problem, is that a lot of times people get hung up on the wrong things. We've
Mhm.
see this a lot of time with websites, where we design a website for a company and they get hung up on the size of the icons. And I was
Mm.
talking to Ken about this yesterday or the day before. It's like, no one is going to go to your website and say, gee, this icon is the wrong size, I'm not going to do business with this company. Okay. So don't get hung up on the wrong things. And like you said, the benefits of call tracking far outweigh any potential downside.
Yeah, just when you were talking, Paul, one of the things that occurred to me, I mean, obviously there's more to call tracking than even I covered so exhaustively, but like even things as simple as it gives you a dashboard to be able to see your calls over, basically a 2-year period. It kind of, you lose data after a period of time, right?
Right.
As with any analytics engine, but it gives you the ability to even take seasonality out of it and go, how is February of 2023 performing against February of 2022? And it even allows you to see things like unanswered calls. And I think for a business, like if you can see a dashboard that says, oh man, like our a pie chart that says, answered, unanswered, dropped, abandoned, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like it's so powerful, again, from a coaching standpoint, but also from an operations standpoint, because there's lots of businesses out there who, for good reasons, the team takes lunch together. But I can't tell you the number of times I've said to a customer, like, but did you know you're missing, like, here's, 35 phone calls that you missed in the last week because of that lunch hour not being covered by a real person. So,
Yeah.
it gives you an opportunity to tighten up the engine of your business, which is important.
And that is a fantastic segue into the question I have for Paul, actually, which is, how important is speed of response in winning business? Because as Ian said, there's a lot of leakage, whether it's form submissions, whether it's unanswered Facebook messages or messages coming in from Google My Business, forums that you don't reply to. I mean, look, it's complicated, and we only have so many hours in the day, and we only have the ability to focus on so much. So, but the reality is, speed of response may be really important. What are your thoughts on that?
It is extremely important. It might be actually one of the most important things that you can do to increase close rates. There was a God, I can't think of it, and maybe Ken or Ian knows, but there was a study done that your chance of closing a sale, or it decreases by like 80% after 5 or 7 minutes, something like that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking. I know you know what I'm talking. I don't know if you know who.
Yeah, it's not, I don't know the exact numbers, but it's within that ballpark for sure.
And because think about it, we live in an instant gratification society. How many people pay extra for shipping so they can get something the next day, even though they don't need it for 2 weeks? All right, it happens all the time. We order something, we want it now. Okay, and that's just the world we live in, and that permeates all aspects of people's lives. And so it goes back to customer experience. That's what people expect, and if you don't have customers and you don't have close rates, you don't have a business. So if people expect speed of response, you better be able to deliver that. And it goes back to, it's about credibility, and it's about putting the customer first. It's about being sensitive to customers' needs and expectations, even though we may think customers' expectations are unrealistic. They don't think their expectations are unrealistic. And the customer doesn't care what you think. Okay. they want a quick response, and you have to be able to deliver that. And it can also improve customer retention. And the good part of this is, Ken, you said there's only so much time in the day, you can only focus on so many things. This is something that can be automated, such as we've talked about in the past, a missed call text back. Someone calls, they don't get a response, they immediately get a text saying, hey, we're sorry we missed your response. This is one of our busiest times of the year, or we're dealing with other customers, however you want to phrase it. But they know they got a response. Okay. And even if it's a canned response, look, people aren't stupid. They know it's a canned response, but they got that response from you. And that's important. So, like I said, it's something that you can automate. So while your office staff is focusing on something else, at least if a call is missed, the customer or potential customer is getting a response, and that's something we can help you with. We can help you automate that.
Yeah, and I mean, the automation piece, there's actually some really important dynamics that I think we ought to talk about, which is we can send an immediate notification to somebody on your team as well. So I mean, it can go
Correct.
to somebody's cell phone, and it's also a great filter because as a business owner, I get so many spam calls a day. And it's like way more than I get from customers who either need help or prospects who are looking to hire our company just because of the nature of our business. Other businesses, that dynamic might change. But what's great about this type of a system is you can actually weed out a lot of the crap so that you don't waste a lot of time. So if you're getting calls from somebody telling you, hey, you need to set up your Google business profile, and you're like, have you even looked at my business? Because I've already got it. It's like, this is a completely irrelevant spam call that somebody, and probably even some kind of not necessarily a robocall, because that's a particular technology, but it's something that's done it's a broadcast voicemail message is basically what it is. You don't have to respond to that. You don't have to waste your time picking up the phone. You can focus on real customer needs, and you can immediately respond, because when somebody calls and you miss that call, you get that notification. If it's a legitimate customer need or customer opportunity, you can act immediately on that. And the technology we use, I know, and Ian, I think you probably do this too, is you can have people actually connect the phone call from their cell phone from that missed call. So incredibly powerful stuff. And speed of response. I mean, you look at statistic after statistic, it doesn't make any difference what industry it's in. The business that responds first has like an 80% better chance of winning that business than the business that responds second or third or fourth.
Can while we were talking, I looked up some stats, guys.
Okay.
So I think these are cool. 78% of customers buy from the first responder. And I think we have anecdotal evidence even from our own businesses that we can't tell you the number of times, somebody finally, calls us, and maybe we weren't the first customer, and they're like, you're the first agency that's picked up the phone, and I've been trying,
all the time.
There's a stat that says right now, so this is a 2022 study, 55% of companies take 5+ days to respond. Sales conversions decrease 391% after the first minute. And I it just makes sense, right? Somebody's we all know, if you're trying to market or sell anything in a business, that the hardest thing is to get somebody to act. Like, the person has acted, they've picked up the phone, their need is great. Yeah. And then they hit a wall, right? And then the frustration levels they direct their frustration at you because you didn't answer the phone.
Yeah. And, I mean,
they move on.
Yeah.
What's that?
they move on.
Yeah,
They call somebody
absolutely.
else.
Yeah, I mean, so if you have a missed call text back, that's a scroll stopping feature. It keeps
Yeah.
people from scrolling and contacting that next business because you did respond, and if you're quick and it is a legitimate need or opportunity, and you
Yeah.
call because you got that immediate notification, you're going to close that business 9 times out of 10 or 8 times out of 10, I guess, actually, according
Yeah.
to Ian's statistic. And look, this
According to the
isn't
study I saw, yeah.
yeah. And this isn't just something, I think a lot of people kind of just slough this off thinking, oh, yeah, right. It doesn't pertain to my business. I can see where it pertained to somebody who's an emergency plumber or this or that because there's an immediate need that somebody absolutely has. No, it's across the board. So take this seriously, folks.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
that's
across
why
the
it
board.
bugs me. That's why it bugs me. That's why it's a topic in this podcast.
It's across the board because it's not about the service you offer, like you said, emergency plumbing. It's about this instant gratification society that we live in. People expect speed. It doesn't matter what it is. Even if it's not an emergency thing, if they call a business, they want a response and they want it quickly.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, you have the businesses, right, that are trying to be lean and effective, and sometimes they don't always sense the urgency or the importance of this quick response time, and I think those statistics should be a wake-up call that you and your team and the effectiveness of speed of response might be holding back the growth of your business.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, sure. You may need to prune and cut and become lean. This is not an area that you want to sacrifice at all.
And yet we've seen lots of companies do it, right?
Yeah. And there are so many cost effective and affordable solutions that solve this problem.
Yeah.
Ian, another thing that drives me nuts, absolutely boggles
I feel
my
like this is a
mind.
therapy session for you, Ken.
It kind of is. It kind of is.
Just let it in.
Yeah. I'm constantly amazed at the fact that people don't think that text marketing applies to their business. And it blows me away because they think that. And I think the bias is that a lot of people think, their experience with text marketing is text marketing that's done really bad. And
Right.
most of the time it's because somebody got a point of sale system and they didn't get any training and there was no intelligent thought or design put into the use of this system. And they were just told somebody, make sure you send out this broadcast and send it out to everybody in our text list.
Yeah.
And you do that in email, you do that in text. Yeah, you're going to get a bad experience. But I think most people think, okay, well, I got these texts and I didn't want them. And they use that as a bias for, no, I'm not going to use text marketing for my business. I want you to talk about your insights and thoughts about, is text marketing effective? And if so, what can you do to make it effective? And should a business use it?
Yeah. Before I do, I just want, text marketing started to gain momentum. I don't know, maybe 3 years ago, maybe not even that long ago, like really big momentum. And one of the things I've noticed is that this is just on the dental side, but I think it's true with pretty much any business operations software. So in particular, this is practice management software for dentists, which would include practice management software for any healthcare business. But what I found is, the companies that practice management software companies started to include texting in their systems, right? Because it became a point of differentiation and then it became table stakes. But what I found, and the only reason why I discovered this was because one of my dental clients is actually my dentist. And so they introduced this new SMS platform. I had an upcoming dental appointment. It sent me a reminder by text and by email, which is totally fine. Like, I appreciate it. I love technology. I have my smartphone. So first of all, is SMS texting valuable for every business? Well, only for businesses where their customers and their prospects have smartphones with texting capabilities. And that's got to be, in North America, that's a very high number. 99.99% probably.
Right.
But going back to the story, they set up this, like they checked off the box that said, yes, we want texting to be turned on, but they didn't test it, nor did they actually vet the messages properly. So I can't remember the actual verbiage of the message, but it was a little weird. Like I was like, okay, as a marketer, I know nobody reviewed this and it's out of the box. And so it wasn't so embarrassing, but it was a little bit embarrassing. And then somehow they hadn't vetted the number of SMS texts that would go out. And so it ended up being like 6 messages in half an hour kind of thing, which made no sense, right? Like even when I said, yes, I've booked my appointment, I was still getting messages saying, are you coming in? Please confirm your appointment. And anyway, so it was a bad experience. And I was able to actually not only give the feedback, but we were able to go in as a team and fix the problem because that's what we do. So so first of all, is SMS texting valuable for most business? I think I've answered that. The reason it's so valuable, and I don't have the statistic in front of me, but the last statistic I saw was that the response rate on SMS texting was like 93%, I think it was. And it's almost immediate because it's a very, and I'm going to say disruptive, but don't take that as a negative. Take that as it cuts through the noise of life, right? So if you're a business, then you can cut through the noise that the customer's dealing with. But I think the thing that you have to absolutely, as far as best practices go with SMS texting, you have to provide value. So, you can't check off, yes, we've added SMS texting to our marketing, so now we're a successful business. You have to think through, how is this adding to the buyer's journey? Am I giving them value? Is it also somewhat natural, right? You don't want it to be forced. Are you giving tips? Are you giving exclusive deals? Do you understand your audience? Are you giving valuable information? Right? Like if I go to my dentist and I have a root canal done and I get a text later on with, and it could be an email as well, but again, texting cuts through the clutter a little bit better. So you could send it to both. But with how when you go through a treatment of some kind or you're at your doctor and they give you a list of like, make sure you do this, and this, and you're kind of in this fog, right? Like you're out of your element. So this actually cuts through that, where we've seen really good success where we have the treatment follow-up instructions, which are generic, right? Because we have it broken down basically by tags for the type of treatment. So for a root canal, you need to watch out for these things, right? If you shouldn't say bleeding, but if you have bleeding and, it doesn't stop within a certain period of time, call us immediately. If you have pain, call us, right? So those type of things are really valuable. You need to get permission. Sorry, go ahead, Ken.
Well, yeah. Also, I think, just even a positive thing, like the next day to say, hey, just checking in to make sure, we wanted to make sure you're feeling well. I mean, that's just goodwill that you're building. And nobody's going to get pissed off about getting a message like that. They may not respond to it, but it's not going to piss them off.
Yeah. And this is just kind of a side thought, but we've talked in other podcasts about the power of omni-channel marketing.
Yeah.
I want to kind of just plant a seed in people's thinking that, like, however you do SMSing, if it's through an existing system, if it's through a new omni-channel system, I don't know. Even if, your staff has a phone for the, and they text them, it's not automated, but they could do that. You like an omni-channel system where it's like a dashboard for your staff where they see, oh, an email came in, oh, a text came in, oh, a Facebook Messenger came in, oh, a Google Business Profile message came in. So they're not juggling a million different platforms. They have one platform, which highly simplifies their life. And of course, as you've talked about, Ken, like the automation aspect, like an omni-channel platform will allow you to automate all of those things, so that, when somebody comes in after they've bought something from you, they get a text, they get a nurture campaign, whatever it is, right? So, And then if the person responds, which is actually what you want somebody to engage with the texts. Your team needs to have a very easy and obvious system so that they see that immediately. Because Paul just talked about response time, and that was thinking about lead response time essentially, but this is like communication response time, which when you move into any kind of instant messaging or texting, people's level of patience goes down immediately because it's an immediate conversation or communication channel. So you expect, if somebody, even if it's automated, and you get a text saying, hey, are you prepared for your upcoming meeting or whatever, or confirm if you're coming, or do you have any questions, and nobody's watching somehow for those questions, you just blew it.
Yeah.
But some other best practices: get permission. Any type of communication, whether it's email, whether it's SMS, some of it can be implied, like on a business to business side, oftentimes you can have implied permission. But as a best practice, it's always better to have people to say, yes, I accept this. And then obviously having an easy opt-out. So, a message even at the beginning of the conversation that just says, hey, if you don't value these messages, please send us, stop, and it'll automatically stop the messages.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, that's a requirement for a text message marketing platform. So you shouldn't really be using just a regular cell phone to send text messages, that even if it's a community or an office phone number, it really needs to have that ability for people to say stop, to unsubscribe, and no longer get those messages.
I agree. I have to tell you, there's some unscrupulous marketers that market to me, maybe to you guys as well, and to the businesses on this in the audience. Man, I can't tell you that, I'll get some spammy text message, and there is no way to stop it, right? In fact, you don't even want to respond to it, because then they know there's a live person on the other end.
Right. Yeah.
But you can block the number, of course.
Yeah.
You should be personalizing your messages. You should be keeping them brief. Text messaging is about brief, very concise. Don't make it long-winded. Set clear expectations. Let your subscribers know how often they can expect to get a message from you, and what kind of content they're going to receive. A/B testing any form of communication is valuable, right? A/B test it. See if communication 1 or A or B works better. And this is true with anything you're marketing. Have a clear call to action. Guide them. Let them know how they can act. How can they get a coupon? How can they make a purchase? Do they need to visit your website? Do they need to call you? Whatever it is. And then timing is key. We talked about, the importance of being able to respond quickly. And part of that, there's kind of two sides to this. You don't want, because heck, I've woken up and my phone has a spammy text message in it, right, from 3 a.m. And I'm like, okay, robot, right? Ignore. So make sure you schedule your SMS messages to your time zone, but more specifically to the time zone of your audience, whoever you're connecting with. Keep it within work hours, right? You don't want to be sending them text messages on the weekend if that's probably not appropriate. But, with some of these tips, I think if you took some of these best practices and you employed them in SMS texting marketing, it's going to be really valuable, and it's going to be valuable to you, but also to your audience. And that's who you should be thinking of. Yeah.
I think, it's important, you can, in my mind, I still think text marketing, it can be just transactional. And again, there are a lot of studies that show that if you send a text reminder to people about their appointment, they're going to remember that appointment, and there's a cost of, opportunity that you give up for every appointment that is a no-show. Absolutely. So every business has a huge stake in improving and decreasing the amount of no-shows. And text messaging is the best way to do that, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because people have their phones on them almost all the time.
Yeah.
Almost.
What's the latest stat? It always blows me away, but like I've seen some of the stats where you touch your phone 2,000 times a day or whatever, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
it is ridiculous.
Yeah. And I think there's another stat out there that, somebody's phone is an arm's length away, like 20 hours a day or something like that. Maybe even
And if
more
you have a
than that.
smartwatch or whatever, like a integrated
exactly.
watch, it's even closer.
Yeah. So, but there are, I think it's important to also realize that there is broadcasting text marketing.
Yeah.
And that's okay too. I mean, as a matter of fact, that can be really great for a lot of businesses. It may be completely irrelevant for other businesses, but that doesn't mean that you want to just walk away and not think that text marketing is going to be beneficial for your business. It's absolutely critical. And if you're going to be doing broadcast text messages, there better be value that you're delivering when you're sending that message. You shouldn't overdo it. And like you said, keep it brief, make sure that call to action is very clear, all of those things. And I think most people, it's like a lot of people like, oh, I want to make this announcement because we have this really cool pizza that is just a god awful pizza. I mean, nobody in their right mind would want to eat this thing, but somebody came up with the idea and it's like, let's broadcast that we now have this pizza. Well, you know what? You're burning a lot of your credibility by sending out a message that overwhelming majority of people don't care about. Focus on your core. Use your text marketing to focus on driving business for your core services, your core products. Absolutely critical. So,
Ken, sorry, I just wanted to add this. I think, when we were talking about personalization, one of the things that can be really valuable from a texting standpoint is if you're using a sophisticated enough CRM system where you're tracking, the activities of a person and you're tagging them, if you're a business with multiple products or multiple services, and you're able to tag those intelligently, and somebody shows interest, whether they're a customer or a prospect, and they show interest in a particular area, like that's where you can get some really exciting communication going, whether it's email or texting, but especially since we're talking about texting, where, hey, somebody downloaded this checklist or this guide, and now we can follow up with specific questions or even a follow-up value added piece to give them, whether it's a webinar or, do you have any questions about that or anything like that, that really does, it's looking at the buyer's journey and you're intelligently intervening at the right time in order to help them.
Yeah. Segmentation's absolutely critical for text marketing. Absolutely, for sure. So we've been yammering on for 53 minutes and we've only talked about 4 questions. I think this may be a first for us. I have so many other things that have been bugging me. But I think what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to schedule a couple more therapy sessions for me. So,
all right.
So I think
doctors are in the house.
Yeah. So let's wrap it up for today. But, is there anything that you guys have thought about, related to the 4 topics that we really have kind of dwelled on today that you guys want to add at this point?
I'll add one thought, and this has come up in discussions recently, in that when you choose your partner, your marketing partner well, they will, just like we're, as your marketing guides, are talking about these things. Not everybody in the marketing world understands the value of these things like we're talking about. So, if you've heard some things that are kind of outside the scope of whoever you're working with from a marketing perspective, seek out somebody that has kind of a broader knowledge so that they can help you. Because one of the things that I find really valuable for our clients, and I think you guys probably do too, because you come at it from a holistic point of view, is that you're able to say, they might come to you for a specific problem that you solve, and you might take a more systematic approach or you might not. But then, once you've solved that problem, they have a heck of a lot more problems. And so as you're building that relationship with the business owner, as the business owner is asking questions or saying, wow, I'd really like to connect with prospects in this way, or I've been thinking about Google Ads or texting or whatever. Having a marketing partner like a CMO, whatever it is, fractional CMO, an agency that can help guide you and filter through that information for you so you're not chasing the latest shiny object, can be hugely valuable to you and your business and to your team.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, I mean, what we've talked about today has been actually fairly diverse across several channels, several topics, several tactics, I think about this stuff all the time. I mean, it drives me nuts sometimes, but it's a blast. So, I think it's important, like you said, Ian, you need to have somebody who's a partner, who's looking out for you, who has both the breadth, but also the depth to help you, get the answers that you need and get the systems and processes in place. So anything else from you?
I think the only thing I'd add is that, look, that the world has changed drastically in the last couple of years, and everything that's happened with COVID has forced a lot of businesses, a lot of organizations to realize that a lot of things can be done online, and that's never going to change. They've realized that they can do things online, they can do things remotely. And as the consumer base continues, and this is something we see with a lot of small businesses that have been around for 15, 20 years, whatever, as the consumer base becomes younger, if you will, they're more comfortable with technology, they're going to interact with your business differently than you probably have interacted with customers traditionally, and you have to adapt to that. You have to understand it and realize it and adapt to it.
Yep.
Good point.
Absolutely. All right, Ian, you want to take us out?
Sure. So if you value this podcast, please share it with others. And until next week, keep calm and mark it on, folks.
See you.